In order to exercise power, governments need to communicate with their people, and generally we think of the information and messages they send as the main part of their communications policy. Just as with infrastructure, with content policy, governments are also trying to enhance national security, develop the national identity, and improve economic development. On the goal of national security, we often hear reports, and there are many studies about the role of government censorship. But there's also another aspect to the content of information that governments try to send to its people, and that is public safety. A government's ability to deliver information necessary to the survival of people during a national disaster is really critical to its credibility. And the discussion in the previous chapter of the Tsunami Help blog and wiki is an example of where governments left a vacuum and civil society volunteers filled the breach with their own information. In terms of national identity, one of the most common tools governments use to build a national identity is a public broadcaster. In the United Kingdom, the British Broadcast Corporation, the BBC, has been the image of the British abroad since the time of its empire. In the Middle East, Qatar's public broadcaster Al Jazeera News has greatly influenced Qatar's standing in the region and in the world. And in India, Doordarshan, the public broadcaster, gave great support to the idea of secular India with its programming in the early years. In all these cases, though, there are always tensions between the demands of the public broadcaster to deliver programming that people wish to watch and the goals of the government's national identity development. From its early years of the BBC, Radio World Service, the news often criticized the British government in order to enhance the credibility of the news. Al Jazeera in the Middle East has been very critical of many other Middle Eastern governments, who in turn have put pressure on their companies not to advertise on Al Jazeera, seriously undermining its economic sustainability. And Doordarshan in India in the 1980s shifted away from its all-secular approach to programming to include religious teleserials. This greatly improved its commercial revenue from advertising. However, in some cases, like its early blockbuster Ramayana in 1987, a teleserial based on the great Hindu epic, some of the images from the teleserial fed into communal violence between Hindus and Muslims. So just as with infrastructure, governments try to use information and ideas for national security, for national identity development, and for economic development, but they don't necessarily control the results.